Aloha and welcome to another episode of Oath Keepers Hawaii. I'm down here today with my good friend Mr. Gilardy, who has taken an oath to help you guys, the real people, get your legal and lawful remedies. He specializes in bankruptcy, foreclosure, and trust law. Today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about trust law. As we all know, we've been watching our global markets just go crazy. Our world before our eyes is changing daily. And bottom line is families need to start thinking about protecting their assets. So I'm actually down here today, not only for all of you guys, but for myself. I want to make sure that my family is protected all the way. So when these banks crash and things start falling apart, it's very, very difficult for you to lose everything if your house is legally and lawfully protected in a trust. Your properties in Hawaii, whether it's your cars or your houses or all of your assets, they need to be protected from other people going after your legal name and taking your property. So what we're going to do is talk to Mr. Gilardy in depth today a little bit about trust law. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. And we're back. Well, welcome again. Thank you so much. It's so nice to have you on the show again, Mr. Gilardy. How are you doing today? So as we were just sharing with the folks at home, I have been hearing out there all the time, because I visit a lot of ministries and different churches. People are so concerned about the economy. They're concerned about their jobs. They're concerned about our finances. One of the things that keeps coming up is trust. And they ask me, do I have resources or people who can prepare trust? So we're here today. You said you're going to explain to me a little bit how trusts work and the folks at home and what, I guess, the first steps. Let's go through. I guess I'm going to let you share what you normally share with your clients that come and ask, and we'll let you direct the show today.
Well, the whole idea of a revocable living trust is not so much to protect your assets from third parties, but to organize them for yourself, and also to not have to pay probate taxes.
Oh yes,
we have death taxes in the United States, and real property, if it isn't in a trust, you have to go through probate.
I know lots of people have gone through probate,
right,
and
it's
it
very
eats up
expensive.
all the assets of the property.
Right. So if you don't have the trust to protect you, then you're going to get stuck with the paying of the taxes. A lot of people in Hawaii don't have wills and trusts. It's surprising. Some of them do some really stupid things. Like, for instance, they'll put their children on the deed. In other words, they'll make their children an actual owner of the property, thinking, well, when I die, then it just goes to my kids. Well, the problem is not so much when you die; it's when you're alive. If your children have an interest in your property, and they get in trouble, they get in an automobile accident, or they get in debt situations, people can come after the property.
Right.
Because your child owns it. So let's say your child gets in an automobile accident, it's not very well insured, which is very much the case, particularly for younger people, and somebody gets killed. Now all of a sudden, now you're talking about $1 million verdict against them, and all of a sudden, they can then come after the interest owned by your child in your property.
Oh my gosh!
So it's not a really good idea. I mean, that causes a tremendous amount of problems.
I would think teaching this to people, and that's the reason we're doing the show, is one of the most important things that you can do for folks if you want to literally leave a legacy for your family. If you've worked your whole life to get a property, pay it off, you certainly don't want to lose it because you didn't set up your will or your trust for final expenses and all. So I think it's just amazing. So I'm very excited that we're going to be able to teach the folks at home and set up some meetings to do this. So as myself, I'm being an interested client myself, I'm going to go ahead and prepare and get a living trust for myself, or whatever you recommend for our family. But take me through the steps as just anybody else that you would come in and they say, please explain to me how this works.
You first start out with a will.
Okay.
Okay. And the will does a couple of things. First thing, it sets out who's in charge. If you pass away, who do you want to be the person that takes care of you. Normally it's your spouse, but it may be a situation where your spouse isn't
Can't.
capable of handling it or doesn't want to. So you figure out who that's going to be, whether it's a lawyer or whether it's a friend or it's a child. I mean, an adult child, not a minor child.
Right.
And you set out the trust. And in the will, in the olden days, that's what set out everything you wanted to do. So in the will, you would set out, I want John to have this piece of property, I want Sam to have this piece of property, I want Alice to have this piece of property.
Correct.
We don't do that anymore.
Okay.
But you have to have trust, a will, because the will then points out that everything upon your death is in your trust. Okay. And wills are very short. They're usually only 3 or 4 pages long, unless you have specific things that you want to put in. Let's say you have a certain kind of jewelry or something that somebody in the family wants. Sometimes you can put it in your will.
Okay.
Then the next thing that comes up is what we call the revocable living trust. And what that does is normally the same person that's the personal representative in your will, upon your passing, will become what we call the settlor. And would be the person, best way to, instead of using big terms, we'll say just the person who would be in charge of their assets and to see where they go. Now, normally what we have is a trust that pours over so that the other spouse gets the major property. And that, and under those circumstances, we have a generation skipping, so that your spouse will not have to pay probate taxes or death taxes on the property if the trust is done correctly.
Okay.
Okay. During your life, the person who takes care of your trust is yourself. In other words, you're the
Trustee.
you're the trustee on the trust.
Okay.
And so you can do whatever you want. And now, just by putting it in a revocable living trust doesn't mean that creditors can't get to it. But it does set up the whole business of where we're going to go and how it's going to be. So the settlor or the trustee, and the settlor is just the person who actually makes the trust out. Okay, the trustee is the person who, after the trust is made, is in charge of...
Accepts the fiduciary responsibilities.
That's correct.
Okay.
Very well put. And you can make the trust any way you want to. You can actually make trusts that are not revocable. Okay, those are trusts that you may have spendthrift children, or for instance, like in some of these trusts, children will only get a certain amount when they turn 21, another amount when they turn,
more mature.
Yeah, more mature, you get a little bit more. And I've seen them go all the way up to 40 years old before they get it all.
Well, that kind of makes sense, actually. It's protection for them.
It's protection for them. It's protection for them. And it works fine. As you can see, here's a one. As you can see, it's pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
It covers a tremendous amount of stuff. A lot of it is the same thing in every trust, but each trust is slightly different. You have to kind of have to watch what you do, but you have to actually transfer the property into the trust.
Okay.
You can't just file the trust and say I want it to be there.
We have to do it legally and lawfully in the land
you
court.
You actually have to file a deed.
Okay.
In the proper place.
Okay.
Where the property goes into the trust. And the same thing with the money and everything else.
All the assets.
All the assets.
Okay.
You should really open up your bank account if it's got a lot of money, and it should be in the trust, and you transfer the whatever cash assets or bonds or whatever they are.
Right.
You transfer them to the trust.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's the way it worked. Now, upon your passing, your spouse would be basically back in the same place, and we have a concept in the United States of what is called tenancy by the entirety.
Tenancy by the entirety.
Right.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Okay, it means that if you and your spouse own property by tenancy by the entirety, upon the death of the first spouse, all of it automatically goes to the second
living spouse.
Right.
Okay.
And it's a pretty important part of our law. A lot of people don't understand that, and so a lot of times, even though you aren't ready for a trust, you still have to make sure the property, while in both your names, if it's really in two separate names, we call it tenancy by tenants in common. Somebody can come after the spouse's assets. So if one spouse gets in trouble, then
they're going to attack the other spouse too.
Yeah, they can't though. That's the whole
Oh, the
idea.
trust is what protects
The
it?
trust, or there's just the tenancy by entirety.
Okay.
It is unbreakable, so that the only people that can break a tenancy by the entirety are the spouses themselves. In other words, one spouse can't do it. It has to be both spouses.
In agreement.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good protection.
It's very good protection because it's very strong in the state of Hawaii, and if done the right way, even the proceeds from the sale of a house that was tenanted by the entirety, the cash itself can be tenanted by the entirety under certain circumstances. Okay, so that's pretty much how you do a living trust.
Okay, that's lovely.
And what you do is you come in and see the attorney, and you lay out what all your assets are, and you see what the attorney will see what you can do. Now,
So it's almost like going when you're paying your taxes and just bringing everything in, all your financials.
yes,
Pretty
you
much
need
everything.
to have it pretty
Okay.
much.
So just letting everybody know what to expect.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what you do.
Okay, and then they basically sit down and consult with you
Right.
to find out literally what they're trying to design for their family and their particular situation.
And it's for the most part, almost everybody who owns land in the state of Hawaii should have a living trust.
Honestly, at this point, with what we've been trying to do with helping people with the foreclosures and bankruptcies, I would literally say as soon as you buy a house, you want to get a trust immediately. 'Cause
Yes, that's
I mean, you might as well just take a little bit extra money on your loan or what have you, get that trust and do it immediately.
Well, doing the documentation is fairly inexpensive.
Yes,
It's not that
yes,
expensive
yes.
compared to what you save.
Oh my gosh, exactly. What we've just seen, the legal fees rack up in these foreclosure cases. If they had things set up legally and properly in the first place, they might not be in the situation. So there's just all kinds of benefits. I love this. So what's the next part of
Well,
this?
the next stuff is two things that you really need to have.
Okay.
One is what we call a durable power of attorney. And what that does is that if you're ill or you're incapacitated,
Correct.
then you appoint someone
Okay.
to be able to speak for you.
So can that be your spouse as well, or is that your attorney?
It's usually your spouse. Sometimes it may be a good friend. Sometimes, in some cases, it's actually a parent. But it's normally you want somebody at least your age or younger.
It's mature,
yeah,
stable, competent.
Right, person, and then you should discuss with that person
Right.
what it is you want done. For instance, if you decide you want to be cremated and your ashes put in the ocean, you know.
Stated in there, so everything's clear.
Yeah, so it's all clear.
Okay.
And the final thing is what we call an advanced healthcare directive,
Okay.
and that lays out. Again, the person usually is the same person who does all these things, but this is actually for just your health.
Okay.
And it tells you first thing who the people are,
Right.
what you want done to yourself. Let's say, for instance, you want to give away body parts. And that sounds a little gross, but it's really important.
Oh, absolutely. It saves lives.
And it's a wonderful gift for someone.
Absolutely.
Maybe even someone you don't know.
Right.
It also lays out, for instance, do you want to just let go? I mean, in other words, a lot of people, they can put you on machinery
Right,
and all
for
kinds
long
of things for
time.
long periods of time, and the doctors actually have their oath requires them to try and save your life, even though you may not want to do that. So that lays those kinds of things out. It also lays out where you know, who the doctors you want to take care of, and where do you want to be buried,
Sure.
which religious group do you want to take care of you.
So it's basically, it's your actual kind of testimony of what you want,
Right.
that for the people to follow. And so at that time, I imagine when people are going through loss of life or end of life, and the other, whoever's in charge and grieving, it's hard to, you're emotionally attached, and having the person of sound mind before that happens decide what I would want would probably give, I don't know, I think it would give me peace of mind. I wouldn't want my husband or my children having to make decisions because they don't know what I want. So they're vacillating, right? So I
Well,
think
this helps alleviate that kind of
to
stuff
just
out.
make it peaceful
Now,
for everybody.
again, you will have what we call a designated agent who will be in charge of making sure that they do the things in your advanced health care directive.
Well, this is all very, I think,
And usually it's the same person that does everything.
in the trust, like the trustees,
the
takes
trustee
care of this
and,
too.
and then the person who has the power of attorney and the person who has the directive stuff for your health. It's usually the same person, and it's usually your spouse. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best person. Maybe your spouse is, maybe your spouses have had a dependency problem of some sort.
Right.
So you want to have your oldest child do it, or
Right.
a very old and trusted friend.
Right. Makes total sense. Now, you talked about irrevocable and revocable, and you also mentioned spendthrift. I've heard of dynasty trust, spendthrift trust, irrevocable, revocable, all kinds of different trusts. Is it? They're all really good in their own whatever they're trying to do, or
That's right. Like for instance, a spendthrift trust is you have a relative that you just don't think is very good at spending their money, and you give them money out of the trust and it'll be gone. So, with a spendthrift trust, they can only take out so much.
it's like a management system,
Yes, it's sort of like a management idea.
or one of those payouts like the annuities gives you a little
Yeah, a
bit,
little
yeah,
bit,
kind of
yeah, a
like
little
that.
bit, yeah.
Okay, so they
And
understand.
all the trusts are subject to being broken. I mean, you can file suit and try and break them.
I thought the irrevocable is the one that is not.
Well, an irrevocable trust is different. See, with a revocable trust, you can take everything in and out of trust. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Now, an irrevocable trust is different. It goes into the trust. The trustee is usually not yourself. Usually it's somebody else. It might be a bank. And you can't take it back. Okay, not unless all the beneficiaries agree to it. And the problem with that is there's
Getting all the beneficiaries to agree to
Yeah,
it.
Actually, I'm handling a case like that right now, where
Oh,
we have two trusts, and they kind of ran out of money in the first trust, and now they need money for their mother, and some of the kids are blocking it, and so it can be real fun.
Since we've been working with you and just really studying the law and learning more about all this, and as I had shared with you before, I grew up with bar attorneys, so I wasn't really interested in the law when I was a young person, but now it's come full circle. I love studying all this, and I love helping people to protect themselves, because one of my favorite scriptures is Hosea 4:6, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And just having done this now for the last year or so, I realize how many people, myself included, and older, they're so ignorant of any of this. It doesn't affect them until they're in trouble. It's just like the healthcare, right? My best girlfriend, oncology nurse, and she gets so frustrated because she says preventative health is everything, and if you take your body is meant to actually flourish, but we put garbage in it, we get addictions, we have all these things, and we wonder why we fall apart, right? But she said if people would listen or prepare in advance, they would live really to 120 years old and be really healthy. But we don't. That's us as humans, right? But with the legal and the lawful things, right now what we're sharing with folks is we're living in very precarious times, to say the least. And if you have a home or you have assets and you are concerned what happens in the future, now is the time to get this done, not after the fact. Because after the fact, you may have lost your job, things are in peril and chaos, and Mr. Gilardy might be too busy to take care of you at that point. So I would strongly recommend, if you guys really want to learn more, we're going to start doing some Believers in Business luncheons again. We'll have Mr. Gilardy come down to the luncheons, and he'll talk about different subjects each week. Maybe it's bankruptcy, and if you guys are looking at what do I do, what is bankruptcy, we'll talk on that one week. And next week we might talk about foreclosure and have you bring in all your paperwork that you're being scared or whatever's going on, that they're threatening your house. But this, to me, is the jewel. This is the bomb, because this is the way to help eliminate or solve some of the problems, or at least it'll be harder for you to get yourself into too much trouble if you're all financially, legally, and lawfully protected. So be sure, please, to definitely keep staying in tune with what we're filming each week. So we're going to start that up maybe in another week or two. We'll start a lunch, and we'll start inviting you guys out to join us at one of the local restaurants down here, maybe the Buca de Beppo or Ryan's Grill, or we'll find you a great place to bring Mr. Gilardy out so you can meet him personally, have some fun, meet some new people, and learn about all this and how to protect yourselves. Well, Mr. Gilardy, I just thank you so much for this informative thing. Next time I come, I'm going to bring my husband with you, or with me, because we'll bring in all our financials, and we want to get started on this right away. It's very important that we all do this to take care of everything. So thank you for joining us today, and aloha.